Hi everyone, today we are going to talk about 6 stages of the dark night of the soul. I'm going to start with explaining what the dark night of the soul is, how it comes about and why it comes about, and then talk about the 6 stages of the dark night of the soul, and at the end we explore how we can move through this period of the dark night of the soul more easily and quickly. The dark night of the soul is a term that goes back to a long time ago. Some believe it goes back to the Spanish mystic Saint John of the Cross, but that's not for sure. The dark night of the soul is a sense of emptiness and meaninglessness when nothing makes sense to you anymore. You start asking big existential questions and you start looking for a meaning or purpose for life, because the meaning that your mind had given to life has fallen apart and doesn't make sense to you anymore. The dark night of the soul usually comes about for some people when they experience a loss of a loved one or loss of all that they had. But for others, it comes when they have got everything they wanted and then they see the emptiness of all that and they feel that emptiness within themselves. So it can come in different ways, and when it happens, your body might start reacting to it by flaring up the old illnesses that you already had or by developing new ones. You may feel dull and low in energy, and emotionally you will feel hopeless, empty, and distant. In general, the dark night of the soul can happen when we have been out of alignment with our true essence for some time, and we can't even remember who we truly are. The lifestyle we have chosen is out of alignment with our soul. The person we have become is out of alignment with our soul, and our emotional state is out of alignment, and we are not aware of any of those. And life may even seem perfect on the outside to both us and others. The dark night of the soul can even happen when we have just started our spiritual journey, but more in a conceptual way. We haven't really grasped the meaning of our spiritual journey. This means that we are at the first stage of the dark night of the soul, initial awakening, where we have a sense of curiosity and longing for spirituality. We have this desire to connect with the consciousness, with the divine, but we are not still committed to the journey. We are more interested in gathering spiritual knowledge, and we get a high or get gratification out of that, but we haven't got the journey into our heart yet. This stage, the initial awakening, is not a very common stage, but some go through it. I went through it, and then I realized that that initial excitement doesn't go anywhere if I am not willing to go deeper. Many, as I said, don't go through this stage, but they, in their normal day-to-day life, they are constantly looking for different forms of gratification and pleasures, including sensory experiences. When they experience one of those, they think that they have found a lasting fulfillment at the beginning, but it doesn't take long before they realize that that emptiness still exists within them, and they need to find something else to fill that emptiness. And many get stuck in that cycle for their whole life, but some finally get it. Some finally realize that they cannot fill that emptiness with sensory pleasures and gratifications, and that's when they move to the next stage of the dark night of the soul, which is losing sensory pleasures. This stage starts when we lose our interest in sensory pleasures and gratifications, and we feel bored, restless, we feel confused. So we want to fill that emptiness again with new experiences, but they don't work. We don't want to be around people at this stage, even if we are an extrovert, and we might ask ourselves, like, what is wrong with me? Why I can't be around people anymore? So this stage kind of forces us to solitude, which is necessary for going inward. When we finally take the time to look inside, we uncover all those voices that actually don't belong to us, and we internalize them when we were little. And looking at and seeing those voices and understanding that we are not those voices help us to move on to the next stages of the dark night of the soul. Losing identities. At this stage, you might feel deep loneliness and despair. You can't connect with the people you used to hang out with, and you struggle to function in your day-to-day life. Getting things done becomes difficult even if you are a go-getter. So this is a very difficult phase in the dark night of the soul, where you have to do, because life goes on and you have to do your day-to-day tasks while you have to process some old emotions and beliefs that you were so identified with that you didn't even know they were buried inside you. The emotions and beliefs that you have been unconsciously and automatically you have been avoiding them and didn't want to face them. At this stage, you kind of feel like you don't know yourself anymore. Your sense of self and your identity feels like it's dying, and it is. So it is like your old self is dying, but your new self isn't born yet. So this could be even difficult for the people that live with you, because you feel disconnected and distant. But as you show your willingness to go through this process, you move on to the next stage, which is purification. At this stage, you might have to face more of your dark side, the attachments and negative patterns that made you the person you were before the dark night of the soul, that made you choose the lifestyle that you had before this transformation. All that had limited you and kept you stuck in that limited view of yourself. This stage may feel really intense and uncomfortable, but at the same time it's the most important. It's like a transition state throughout the dark night of the soul. The main fruit of this stage though is self-awareness. And when you go through this process, what can really help you is surrendering to the process, seeing the need for transformation, surrendering to your higher power, and trusting the consciousness that created you can guide you through this process and get you to the next stage, which is illumination. At this stage, you may get to experience some clarity and deeper understanding of yourself and the consciousness. You start to feel connected to a power, a consciousness that is much bigger than you, and that brings you a sense of peace. You feel peaceful, and you also feel appreciation, not for what you have in life, but for the life itself. Then the way that you look at the world and the existence changes, and you get to see the value and the role of the previous stages of the dark night of the soul. And in this stage, you may still face some big emotional and mental patterns that your fear didn't let you look at them in previous stages. According to spiritual masters, the main thing you get to feel at this stage is a sense of oneness with the consciousness, and that gives you a sense of peace and love. A love that, unlike the earthly love that we know about, doesn't turn into its opposite. Because you feel that oneness, you get to show up more as your authentic self. You embody the transformation that the dark night of the soul has brought for you, and you feel the joy that this transformation has brought for you. you don't feel insecure and afraid at this stage anymore, because you feel connected to everything and everyone. You emerge out of the dark night of the soul at this stage into a transformed state of consciousness where life has meaning, not a meaning that your mind gives to life, but you just feel that meaning within yourself, and it is not necessarily a meaning that you can explain to others. This whole process is kind of a rebirth. What dies in the dark night of the soul is your egoic self, your conceptual self, not your true self. What helps you to go through this process more quickly is seeing the necessity of this process, this transformation, and surrendering to the process. The more you surrender, the quickly you come out of it. Surrendering means letting it be without judgment, not thinking that that shouldn't have happened. Not everybody goes through this process, but it might be part of your awakening. And when you are in it, of course, it feels really heavy and negative. But again, when you improve in the process, you see the necessity of this transformation. And even if you didn't want to go through this process, still the life that you had is not going to make sense to you anymore. So it's kind of like if it is part of your awakening, you have to go through it. You can think about it, or I usually think about it as the cocoon period, where you lose your caterpillar self to transform to your butterfly self. What I need to add at the end is that self-care is really important as you go through the dark night of the soul. So make meditation and nature walks and things like that an essential parts of your routine. Nourish your body, because it's going to process a lot of big emotions through this process. Make sure that you get enough rest, and do the bare minimum if it is possible for you. And you just remember that if you don't resist this process, it's gonna be a lot easier. We can talk about this topic for ages. There were a lot of things that I wanted to tell you, but I just couldn't in this brief time. I didn't want it to be too long, but I hope all these insights will help you as you go through this process. Sending you all my love. Until next time.